You're listening to East Meets West, Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Welcome to the East Meets West, Pakistani Professional Journeys podcast. Today we have Muhammad Amjad, who currently has a robust educational background with the completion of a bachelor's and master's in computer science from the University of Central Punjab, a certificate in advanced project management from UoFT, and he's completed the MBA Essentials from Rotman. Similar to his educational background, Muhammad has worked in multiple fields and positions as a software engineer, an IT manager at Levies, and as client manager in various companies such as Rogers and Telus. He's currently working at Telus as a senior client program manager. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Muhammad.
Thank you so much, Azam. Thank you for having me.
I guess we could start off, before we go into the professional aspect, we'll just discuss about your journey in Pakistan, and then we'll move on to Canada. So how was your time in Pakistan, specifically in the University of Central Punjab?
Sure. I did my bachelor's in computer science back in 1997. And of course, before that, I did my FSc in economics and mathematics. And I was always a little bit interested in computer science because I did a little bit of courses here and there after my matriculation and after my FSc as well. It was my brother who actually suggested that computer science is the way to go. And when I applied I actually went to the university to apply for my bachelor's, and it was the last day to apply for the program. And I actually got super excited for it and applied, and very quickly realized that it was the line I wanted to be in.
Was there like a general push from once you reached there that really pushed or resonated in going further?
I personally believe that it was not just my own trust in the field, but because, as I mentioned, it was my brother, it was my father. My mother's cousin was an IT manager in a multinational back then who had also done computer science back in the good old days. And my parents and my family realized that computer science is going to be the future of the world. And of course, it was very brave-minded of them. And then I'm talking about 25 years back then, where a lot of people would either for medical sciences or business administration back then. And computer science was literally a very starting career. So it was interesting to get into a field which not a lot of people knew about. With the push of the family and all, I really got into this and very quickly realized that it was the right one for me.
And I guess when you started at university, was there any like moments that stood out like during your time?
Personally believe the teachers make all the difference. We realized that there were PhD teachers who were teaching us at that time, and every time we would get into a new class, we realized the kind of wisdom they would want to pass on to the students. And it was fascinating. In fact, for a very long time, I thought that maybe after my education, maybe I will consider getting into academics and be a professor as well. Things change. After I completed my master's, I was fortunate enough that even before I had my graduation, I got into my first job, and it was then on a roll kind of a thing. So, never looked back.
And is there any good memories you had in Pakistan that you would like to share or in general?
Of
Or
course, Pakistan is always going to be the home. My family and I actually visit Lahore every year. In fact, it's been approximately 15 years since I've left Pakistan. We actually left in 2008. And since then, there has been no year that I didn't go back to Lahore. But keep in mind that my mother, my brothers, all my friends, my in-laws, everyone we know is back home. It's an obvious choice for us. Even when we decide to go elsewhere for vacation, we always think that we'll go to Dubai, but the goal is still to go to Lahore for that family time. During my last year, we decided to go to London, but again, the idea was London is just a path to go to Lahore. For me, vacation and annual trip is Lahore, nothing else.
yeah. All right. I guess moving on to your journey from Pakistan to Canada, do you mind just walking us through like how that process was? Was it challenging or what are the obstacles you faced maybe through that journey?
Sure. And this is definitely one of those topics which I usually talk a lot about when I'm kind of coaching new Pakistanis coming in.
Yeah.
I was one of those very, very few fortunate Pakistanis who actually had a job before he landed in Canada. And fortunately for me, and trust me, it has nothing to do with my capabilities. It's purely because of the prayers of my wife and my mother. I was actually in Dubai and we had our PR ship during that time, and let's start applying to Canadian market within my own industry, which is telecom, and see what kind of response I get. And to be honest with you, it was not that I was in a hurry to leave Dubai. It was just that I wanted to see what the market is like. And I think I believe I applied only for a couple of companies. I think Telus, Rogers, and there was one other company which was the largest value added service provider in the world. It's called Converse, or it was called Converse at that time. I applied for that company and they started calling me for interviews. And it was a chain of interviews with, I told them I was in Dubai. It's going to take me 3 months to come to Canada if I am interested, pay negotiations, etc., etc. To be honest with you, for a very long time, it felt like it was all a joke, which my
Oh,
friends are playing with me, because anything I would say, they would say, yeah, sure, 4 weeks of vacation, no problem
oh,
at all. You'll get this and you'll get that. But things worked out so well, and they did give me an offer letter, which was very lucrative at that time. And when I discussed it with my family and my friends there, everyone kept on saying the same thing. People, when they move to or migrate from Pakistan to Canada, the biggest challenge which they face is that it takes usually 6 to 8 months for them to find the right job.
yeah.
And if I was fortunate enough, again, due to the prayers of my family, if I'm getting an opportunity right on day one, I should jump on it. And that's why at that moment I decided that we're going to go do our Umrah before leaving UAE. And then I went to Pakistan for a month to spend some time with my mother. And then we moved to Canada back in July 2013, which is exactly 10 years from now. And it's been exactly 10 wonderful years since I came over here. And fortunately, again, coming back to the same point, fortunately for me, before I landed, my laptop was in the place where I was supposed to land. I never had to go through that tough time, which
Yeah.
typical people had to do. But my guidance to others on that subject is, when you're coming into a new country, not only try to understand if you have the right skills, but also try to look for the right opportunity as well. And you may be able to find that right opportunity with the right mindset and the right time as well. If you're right candidate at the right time, hopefully things will work out for you.
Yeah, I think so that's extremely proactive, just actually applying to the jobs before even landing to Canada. Did you just apply online or was it, did
Yeah,
you, oh
yeah.
wow,
LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn.
that's really amazing. I've never really heard of that. It's really interesting. So yeah, it's definitely good to make sure some people do that. They should like look in Canada before they land. Were there any obstacles when you first landed, like in terms of getting set? Like I'm sure like the first winter must have been quite challenging, or how
Well,
was?
to be honest with you, yes, whenever you go to a newer place, there are always challenges. I'm actually from Lahore, but Dubai was even warmer than Lahore. You need to understand what benefits you get out of it as compared to what cons you get out of it, or identifying what the problems are. I've always been, or at least I try to be, a glass half full kind of a person. If you've tried to look at the problems, I'm sure we'll find problems everywhere.
Yep.
There's no country, there's no organization, there's no place you can talk about which is perfect. But when you come to this country and you know what you're here for, me, just like most of my colleagues and friends, I came over here for my children's future. And of course, you've heard this a lot of times.
Yep.
And when I'm thinking of that, then having minor challenges, a harsh winter is something which it's doable or bearable. Fortunately for me, at that time, I was working from home
Okay.
for my first company. So it was easy enough not to think about those things. But, challenges like finding a new car, getting your new license, getting your OHIP and all that. Of course, a couple of weeks here and there takes you to settle down. But once you are done with those couple of weeks, you realize that things can work out very well for you and your upcoming family.
Got you. And is there like a major difference? I'm assuming there is, like between the computer science and then project management, or did you see the flow from that experience into the project management role?
Yeah, that's a great question, Asam. And yes, and when I started my career, I was actually a programmer and then went into a quality assurance kind of work. But back then, very quickly, I realized that within the software industry, the right work or the right kind of work which I was interested in was project management, which was to gather the customer requirements and then pass it on to the techies to actually do the programming for. By doing that, year of experience right at that stage. The company I used to work for was called Crestsoft
Yep.
back in Pakistan when I
Mhm.
recently graduated. Crestsoft at that time was the largest software house in Pakistan. It was part of the Crescent Group, which has like I don't know, 20 companies. They were pretty big, and I was fortunate enough to get into that. And of course, they guide you, they teach you, and all. And the first couple of years of experience was brilliant. You get into a new company, you're getting your first paychecks. It's beautiful. You love every bit about
Yeah.
it. But unfortunately, back in I'm sorry, 2002, the software industry major fall down
Yep.
all over the world, by the way, not just in Pakistan. So I decided to move into the industry side, which means that I decided to become an IT manager. And you mentioned that in my introduction as well. After a couple of years, I joined an organization called Levi Strauss, which most of the people in the world know about. We all wear jeans.
Jeez.
Levi's is a global operator, but that company had a major association, which I have in my heart for that company, because that opened the gates for me for understanding the concept of multiculturalism, diverse teams. At that time, I was working with people from all over the world, be it people from Brazil or Indonesia or India. Our regional head office was in Singapore. So I used to travel over there quite a
Mhm.
lot as well. And all these other IT managers would fly in over there as well as part of our IT management conference. And just making friends at that time from people all over the world would open up your mind to understanding how people work and how to understand people more. That's when, and of course, after a couple of years, I realized that project management is the way I moved to go forward. I got an opportunity to get into telecom, worked there in Pakistan for a bit.
Yep.
Then I moved to Dubai, did a few big projects over there. And as you may have heard, when you're in Dubai, you want to think about the future as well. So tried to apply for my immigration back then, the same kind everyone applies for. And things worked out. And that project management concept stuck with me. I did my PMP back in 2007. Of course, I'm still maintaining it. I did teach and coach project management to a couple of 100 students by now as well. I used to teach risk management in Pakistan and did a couple of classes for PMI Arabian Gulf chapter in Dubai as well. I'm still a member of PMI chapter locally as well, and of course I've always tried to coach my own teams towards some skills of project management as well. And I always consider myself as a student. So as you may have noticed through my LinkedIn profile, so I did a very detailed certificate in advanced project management from University of Toronto. It was 6 courses program, so it took me like 2 years to do that. And then, of course, I did another course called Steering Complex Projects, which is from University of Cambridge, another one of those online courses. But the one which I recently did, and I'm very proud of it, is called MBA Essentials from Rotman Business School, and opened my eyes and my mind more towards the business side of the delivery. So it helps you and guide you. The reason I'm telling you the story is because to my colleagues and my friends and all the Pakistanis who may be listening to this, I would like to say that work keeps on going on, but building up your own skills by studying and learning all the time, that's the way to go. You should always be open to learning new skills, and that can help you grow everywhere.
And how did you manage your time between getting your professional designations and then also working, and then also you got family commitments and all the other things?
Totally valid point. First of all, the courses which I do or I'm interested in, they're typically after hours or after office hours or over the weekends or early mornings. So sometimes it becomes tricky, it becomes a little difficult as well. But every once in a while, it feels and gives me that trusting feel that now I'll be getting enrolled in something new. I'll get to learn something new and pass that knowledge on to others as well. Yeah, sometimes it gets difficult, but you have to juggle a few things. And that's why I was never able to register into a complete dedicated MBA program because it
That's
has a 2 year duration.
yeah,
It takes much of your family time away from you. And I was very interested in doing an executive MBA, by the way. I still am,
yeah,
by realizing that it takes a lot of your time away from you, which sometimes work very well, but because the duration is so long,
yeah,
it makes it extremely difficult, especially when you want to be involved with your family as well. I'm extremely engaged with my family. My son is just completed his first year at University of Toronto. He's studying computer science, and
nice.
I'm extremely involved in with him, which means I would be involved in knowing what courses he's studying next, what courses potentially we can take electives in, etc., etc. And he would talk to me about these things as well, know that that's the field I've been in. So he understands that and would like to gain that knowledge from me as well. We talk about work, new technologies all the time. My younger one is in grade 10 now,
Yeah.
and she is getting into that age as well, that we start talking about what does she want to do. Is there anything which she would be interested in, be it arts or becoming an executive somewhere or getting into HR, whatever she would want to get into, with grooming her to learn things for now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I remember back in university, my dad was my go-to in terms of any advice, just generally talking about
Sure.
the trajectory and stuff. So that's a very good point. It's very helpful
Yeah.
just to get like from outside. I guess what was your challenge when you were in project management? Like, where do you find like the difficulties, either in the courses or in work?
Yeah, of course, there are various challenges you can talk about. But when you're working here, the good thing is that it depends on your organization. The current organizations which I've worked for, including Rogers and Telus, they're very helpful for your trainings, your well-being, thank God, and they're considerate towards you. I usually do discuss it with my management to let them know what I'm planning to do or what I would like to. So I would like to do these things with the blessing of my organization as well. That kind of helps in case I need some extra time or etc. etc. So it really works out well if you are doing it in the right way, if I may say it.
Okay. And the shift between Converse to Rogers, how was that process like?
Sure. Converse is was the largest value-added service provider in the world, and they used to provide services like voicemail and SMS to big telecom companies. And Rogers was my client. And there was a time after working in commerce for approximately 2 years that my client, who was Rogers, they reached out to me and they said, if at any point you decide to leave commerce and want to work for one of the big three telecom companies in Canada, we would like to have you. And that was, of course, I felt wonderful about it. Anytime someone says something like in those terms, and I personally believe that appreciation is the key to develop anyone or to coach anyone when you're grooming them.
Yep.
And when they told me that they appreciate my work, and if the right opportunity opens up, they would like to get me to apply for it, it felt like they appreciate the work I'm doing. And that kind of made me more interested in applying for that post when that opened up, and which did open up in the next few months. And I applied over there. And then I was very happy and I saw growth over there as well. I've
Yep.
worked in Rogers for 5 years, still have that certificate over here on my desk, which said worked in Rogers for 5 years.
Okay, and in terms of, do you mind just giving like a breakdown? So I know you had multiple like areas where you worked in Rogers. Is it possible to give like a day to day for what you might have done? Obviously,
Sure.
not revealing anything too private, but like just in general.
Yeah.
Um,
The project management I used to do in Rogers was towards the core network. And by core network, if you understand the concept of telecom a little bit, or all the traffic is actually routed through the core networks. So our organization within Rogers was focused on upgrading the core networks all the time. So be it security upgrades, be it capacity upgrades, be it anything which needs to be for Rogers to be capable for newer traffic to come in to make it secure for the Canadian people. It would be typically our internal organization which would be working on. So I would typically work a lot with engineering teams
Yeah.
who would write the idea of what upgrades do we need to do. And then the project management group would take the input from engineering and get it implemented through the operations team, who would then go in and say that the method of a procedure would be to do this, and this, and we would only do it during the night. So the idea of a project manager would be project manage,
Yeah.
making sure that there is no downtime, there is no concerns, work is done in time and budget, etc., etc. That was the kind of role I used to do. By the end of the 5 years career, I was an acting manager of a team of project managers over there. I had a great career over there. I
Yeah.
had great relationship in Rogers as well. I still have friends in Rogers, as you can expect. So yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Okay. And I guess from there, I know you moved to Telus right after. Was it like a easy progression, or did you just see that okay, this is the better alternative?
When you are changing organizations, you always look into not just the financial benefit you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
You're reviewing what kind of management I will be getting into, what kind of culture do we have, what other benefits that does the company offer, what kind of leeway I will have when I'll be running my own things over there. Fortunately for me, it was a mix of all things, and I really liked the opportunity I was getting when I was interviewed in TELUS by the person who's an executive director now over here. He found me as the right candidate, and I got this opportunity to work in TELUS as a senior client program manager, as you mentioned. And it's a kind of a role where uh, large, complex deals are assigned to a senior person like myself,
Yeah.
and I would work internally with all the project managers, all the engineers, all the key stakeholders, and get the required support from the key directors involved in the program as well. And then I will be the front face of TELUS to the customer.
Got it. And did you leverage any of your computer science knowledge during your roles, or was it more like high level
You
at
know
that
what?
point?
That's definitely a valid question. I personally believe that in this and nowadays, when you're doing project management, and now even if I hire project managers, they do not need to have a technical background,
Okay.
but it is always helpful if you understand the technology a little bit more.
Yep.
That's where I think I grew in my organization, because whenever the engineers would talk about a network, I will be able to understand that because of my educational background and my experience as well. So I think that when you do PMP from PMI, they actually tell you a project manager for a particular software or a project manager for making an airport is a same project manager. As
Okay.
much as I would like to say that, yeah, maybe yes, but it's always better to have the domain expertise of what you're working on, and then project management can be easy to manage that. That's why getting it from computer science into telecom project management or IT telecom IT slash telecom project management is an easier way to, for at least it was for me.
Yeah, I think your story is very interesting because you started in computer science, then you went into project management, and you built your career from that. So I guess your story is you don't necessarily have to stay in your specific wherever your designation you got, and then you can work around sometimes. So
Right.
it's really interesting. So
Yeah.
I guess for students that are actually interested in this area, like what do you recommend them to either do or be doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a valid point. What happens is that when you study your computer science program, you're open to a lot of types of learning. Nowadays, you talk about AIs and you talk
Yeah.
about clouds and you talk about on one side, of course. Then on the other side, you would talk about architectures and you would talk about networks and you would talk about communications. But it opens up your mind towards understanding all these domains. But once you get into your first career, that's when you realize which one of these really clicked with me and which can I start working on. For me, I started off my career as a Java programmer back in 1999. And very quickly, I realized that even though I did study programming languages in my bachelor's and master's programs, but programming is not something which I'm interested in. So I very quickly shifted to quality assurance, which was testing and debugging the code as well.
Yep.
But working over there, and again, fortunately for me, I had good coaches who would help me at that time. I got an opportunity to work a little bit in project management, and that's where I got the taste of project management back in Cresoft. And even though after that I got into industry side and do a little bit of IT management, but again, what happened in Levies is one of my last annual reviews, the person I used to report to, who was an Australian back then,
Yep.
he said, Mohammed, we really like you as an IT program manager over here in Pakistan, but we've realized that rather than IT manager, you're a great project manager. So we're
Okay.
going to teach you and coach you more towards project management.
Yeah.
And that kind of opened my mind. Yeah, that it totally makes sense because I used to enjoy project management back in Cresoft as well. And these guys are saying that I'm very systematic in writing things down. I have plans for next couple of years about my how I manage things. And then, of course, I started studying PMI a little bit, PMP classes, etc., and realized that I felt that it was the right path for me, if I may say it like that.
Okay. So I guess, for example, I'll ask two questions. The first one, I want to focus on people who are in university. In order to break like into internship, do you recommend reaching out on LinkedIn? What process do you think is probably provides more traction?
Sure. And you know what, Azim, the reality is that now the organizations have changed a little bit. Back in the day, people would contact their seniors and get into things like internships. Now the processes for internships and management trainees have been so formalized that now there are particular departments within the HR of companies
Oh, okay.
which are managing internship programs, for
Yep.
example. So there would hardly be any direct interaction where we would be helping internees. But of course, that does not mean that I'm saying that we cannot help in any way. We as seniors can still help the newcomers get into the right path.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't even know how where to apply, and you can guide them that way. But I think routing your career through the right path and applying through HR websites is the way to go.
Okay. And I guess the second question is for individuals that are moving, like new Pakistanis who don't have professional experience and are trying to break in. What do you foresee like the challenge, and how do you think they might be able to overcome it?
And I believe this whole conversation which you and I are doing, my primary focus is on this subject
Yeah.
because fortunately for me, things were much easier for me. But when I came over here, I became part of an organization called Pakistani Professional Forum. I'm not sure if you've heard of
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
but they help a lot of Pakistani professionals coming in. So my suggestion to all our new friends who are coming in is definitely to get in touch with these kind of forums where there are people who can guide you. And I would never say that there are people who can find your job
Yeah.
because no one can literally find your
Exactly.
job. It's to your own capabilities.
Yeah.
But people can guide you and maybe even get you an interview from the hiring manager as well if the opportunity is there. But having the right networking at that initial point and trying to keep your skills up to date is the way to go. Get involved, try to do as much networking as you can,
Yeah.
and keep your skills up to date.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I think so. That routes up at least the professional aspect. In terms of volunteering, like, are you involved in volunteer? I know it's like extremely busy on your end, so I can't imagine if you have time for that. But if you do,
I try to do things every now and then. For
yeah,
example, Telus has a concept, and so did Rogers, by the way, that they give you a day or so so that you can go and do volunteering work. So we do some volunteer work as a team.
yeah,
For example, while I was in Rogers, can't remember where, but we went as a team to plant trees
oh, yeah,
somewhere. Can't remember where we
yeah,
did that, but we did that. And then of course, recently over here, I did a little bit of volunteering during the COVID days when we were trying to help people with the vaccination areas, making sure people come in, get vaccinated. I even volunteered to be a call agent for TELUS for a day to get those vaccinations booked so that they can go and get those vaccinations done. So yes, every now and then you need to try doing something for the community. That is a greater cause. That's what brings happiness to a person's life. That I'm doing something for the people and for the greater good. I think you need to understand that a lot of people are different, but when you spend money for the sake of bringing joy to others or spend time to do that, it makes you feel great as well. And I'm a firm believer of that. So you should always try to do some kind of volunteering work, even if you're doing it a couple of days in a year.
yeah.
Definitely should.
It also makes the job more impactful as well, for sure. I'm assuming so.
Totally.
Yeah. So in terms of the habits you developed, is there any key habits that just comes to on top of mind, like that really allowed you to progress, like habits or skills that you just maintained throughout your professional career that excelled you?
You know what? I personally believe that it's more of a person to person thing.
Right.
For me, a particular habit which sometimes people find funny and sometimes what people would get excited about is that I tend to plan ahead, which means that even if I'm planning to go to Pakistan, which I mentioned to you, I go there every year. I try to buy tickets 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
I plan to have an idea when by which year I would like to get rid of my mortgage, for example. I like to plan ahead. And I'm a firm believer I make a plan and then he makes a plan.
Yeah.
And the only thing which will work out will be his plan. But
Yeah.
at least I can plan towards something. And that kind of brings an idea or a focus towards which direction a person is going to. And with help of God and of course guidance from others, elders, coaches, mentors, you can try to get into your goal, but you should always try to define your goal. That's what I do. That's my way of doing it. Even if they are smaller goals, when am I gonna buy a new massage chair?
Yeah.
Let's put a goal to
Yeah.
yourself. That way I can understand how much money do I need to save, each month. These kind of definitions of goals and planning, they keep me organized. Sometimes it doesn't work for everyone. It helps people around.
Yeah, it probably also gives like a purpose, like in terms of focusing, and then
Totally.
you build up your skill sets from there. So it's really important. That's really nice. So I guess we can end off in terms of success. How would you define success for yourself?
For me, it's just not a small question.
Yeah.
Success for me is making sure that not only what I wanted, I am achieving that or I'm on path of that, but also if I'm able to bring happiness to myself, my family, my elders, okay, and others. So there are days when I think that I've been successful, things are moving into the right direction, but I wouldn't say that I have reached my goal. There's so much more I want to do. I want to progress in my career. I still want to do my Hajj, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
I want to get rid of my mortgage. I want to see my son get into his first job or his is opening up his new enterprise. I want to help my daughter get into the field she wants to be it become an entrepreneur or be a painter or having her own organization to run with, helping my wife with every decision in our home. So, am I successful? I would like to think that I am on a path which will make me successful down the road. In my mind, I am a firm Muslim and a Pakistani. to be successful, I need to make sure that I'm keeping him happy as well.
Yeah.
So in our home, we make sure that we're praying the required number of times.
Right.
We're making sure that my family understands that when we have the funds, we need to do Hajj. We ensure that we pay zakat more than what is required on us. I need to make sure that success does not really mean becoming a director in an organization.
So,
There are so many other things associated with it, and I would like to think that people with the right mindset and maturity needs to think of all these things.
right.
And the day Allah tell me that now I'm successful, that day I will find myself
Awesome.
successful.
Thanks, Mohammed, for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. And honestly, I hope whoever's listening will get some insight as well as motivation as they progress in their career. Thanks again for being on.
You're more than welcome. And I hope that I'm able to help people out. You take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.